My name is Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video. And in this video, I want to talk to you about why you feel so afraid to set boundaries as an anxious, preoccupied attachment style. So, what do we know? We know that anxious, preoccupied individuals are terrified of being abandoned. They tend to have big core wounds, aka subconscious belief patterns that they carry with them as a result of painful experiences from childhood that got wired in through repetition plus emotion, which fired and wired neural pathways at the subconscious level of mind. So, in short, you have these beliefs you carry around with you everywhere because of how neuroplasticity and the subconscious mind work, that are afraid of being abandoned, not being good enough, being rejected, being disliked or excluded. And so we have these huge patterns that get carried everywhere. The other big core belief is I am bad. I'll be bad. People think I'm a bad person. So imagine when you set boundaries and say no. You can think of your core beliefs as being these things that are going to be activated at any point in time. And if you believe this to be true, then guess what happens? You think if I set a boundary, I'm more likely to be abandoned, or I'm more likely to be alone. Or if I set a boundary, I'm more likely to be a burden and be disliked or rejected. Or if I set a boundary, people are going to think I'm not good enough, that I can't do it, or people are going to think I'm a bad person. And so what we have to understand about anxious, preoccupied attachment styles and the idea or concept of healing anxious, preoccupied attachment styles is that it starts with reconditioning these belief patterns. You're not born with them. They get conditioned into you through repetition plus emotion over time. And we can recondition them following the same patterns. Now, I've got other in-depth videos about how to recondition these patterns on this channel. But what you have to understand is this is part of what's happening. You go to set a boundary and your subconscious mind has these stored dormant beliefs that come to the surface. They get projected onto future fantasies about what happens if I set this boundary. People will think I'm bad or not good enough. And then we go, okay, so I can't do it. And we'd rather go through, as an anxious, preoccupied person, rather go through the pain of being boundaryless than the pain of being rejected or abandoned. And so your subconscious mind is essentially prioritizing its pain points. Now, boundaries are a really important and healthy part of relationships. In fact, without boundaries, it's really difficult for healthy relationships to exist. And something that happens at the subconscious level for the anxious, preoccupied individual is wherever we are boundaryless, the subconscious mind can't help but expect somebody else to be the same way. So anxious preoccupieds tend to lead because of these limiting beliefs about their own boundaries. That, well, if I'm giving up everything for a relationship, somebody else should meet me there. Somebody else should be giving up everything. So being boundaryless creates unhealthy expectations because the subconscious mind is generally searching for homeostasis, equilibrium, somebody to give what you're giving and vice versa. In fact, conflict is generally just born of a perceived imbalance in a relationship. So when you're in this dynamic or situation, you can look at, hey, what are the costs of not having boundaries? Maybe I feel taken advantage of. Maybe I feel frustrated, unseen, unheard, like I don't matter to a partner, like I'm unimportant. And sometimes that's not actually what's happening. Sometimes somebody doesn't actually realize that you're being boundaryless in a certain event or circumstance. A lot of other attachment styles, in fact, expect you to just have boundaries and communicate if something's wrong. And if you don't, they assume everything's totally fine, especially our dismissive avoidance, because they feel fully responsible for communicating a boundary or saying no. And they sort of subconsciously expect that everybody else is that way. So when you have these patterns of not setting boundaries, there's a big cost. And it often also creates a sense of resentment or frustration or even sadness associated with a relationship. But when you have healthy boundaries and can say no, people actually generally feel more drawn to that than you might think. People generally associate somebody with boundaries as having a greater sense of self-esteem or self-confidence and are often drawn towards those sorts of traits or qualities in relationships. They're biologically more attractive. Those traits or qualities, not necessarily everybody with a certain type of attachment style. So what's really important is if you're wanting to change your relationship to boundaries and you're afraid, there's two big reconditioning tools that you need. You need to be able to recondition your beliefs, these ideas you have that if I set a boundary, I'll be abandoned or I'll be a burden. And then you have to do exposure work. You have to rinse and repeat over time, stretching just a little outside of your comfort zone around your boundaries as a whole, so that through repetition plus emotion, you're actually firing and wiring a new set of neural pathways in relationship to your boundaries themselves. Now, I cover this in our boundaries course in a tremendous amount of detail. that gives you step-by-step solutions, steps, everything to actually help that reconditioning process. So it takes place at the subconscious level. It won't feel as scary when you recondition your beliefs around them first. And will allow you to understand, do a boundary audit, understand more about what healthy boundaries are as a whole. But these are some really important first insights to have. Like, what is my current relationship to boundaries? How is it impacting my relationships overall? And what are my fears that make me shy away from them, even though my conscious mind knows it's time to set a boundary? So if you want to check out that course for free for 7 days, you can use the link below. That will help you be able to go through all of that boundary work. But if you also just want to do a deeper dive into understanding those core steps for exposure work, you want to really so we're reprogramming our beliefs first. And then you're using repetition plus emotion to keep just stretching a little outside your comfort zone, setting small boundaries with trusted people, getting comfortable there, expanding outwards a little bit more, setting, slightly larger boundaries with trusted people, getting comfortable doing that, on a sort of repetitive basis as much as you can. And then, bridging outwards more and more outside of your comfort zone, easing into it more, setting boundaries with your boss or more scary people in your life eventually, until it feels like setting boundaries is normal for you. Now, a big part of boundary setting involves the art of being able to take yourself into consideration when making decisions. Boundaryless people don't usually know how to consider their feelings and needs when saying yes or no to things. And that's a big crux of what boundaries are all about. But I hope this makes sense so far. This is sort of a big intro into boundaries if you're unfamiliar. And, the topic of this video is, why is it so scary? So, I won't stray too far off topic. It's because of those core wounds or fears that are living in your subconscious mind as an anxious, preoccupied individual that get projected onto the idea of setting boundaries, and the fear of these things happens. So you prioritize that pain. Okay, I'd rather be boundaryless than be abandoned. So I hope that makes a whole lot of sense. Again, you can check out the course and go a few layers deeper using the link below. And thank you so much for watching and for being here. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.